Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah,
Today we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people go through at some point.
absolutely.
And it can be really tricky,
Yeah.
buying a house for the first time.
Yeah, it's a big step
Like huge.
for sure.
And, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have either been through this or know someone who's about to go through it.
Right.
And we thought it'd be really interesting to kind of deep dive into some of the challenges
Mhm.
and things that people really should know when they're going into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got some really interesting source material today that focuses on the role of communication.
Okay.
And I think that that's something that's often overlooked, but it's really key to a successful home buying experience, especially for first-time buyers.
Yeah, so we're looking at like the relationship between the real estate agent
Exactly.
and a home buyer.
Exactly. Yeah. The agent and the client and how that communication can really make or break the experience.
Because I think back to when I bought my first place,
Yeah.
and I really had no idea what I was doing,
Right.
and it was so easy to feel overwhelmed and confused.
Absolutely. And one of our sources actually cited a statistic that 56% of first-time buyers
Wow.
feel underprepared for the whole process.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all.
So I guess a good place to start would be, who are we talking about when we say first-time home buyers? Is it just like, young couples or
Right. Yeah. That's often the image that comes to mind, right?
right?
But our sources actually paint a much broader picture. I mean, it can be anyone really
Okay.
who's taking that step from renting to owning for the first time.
Right.
It could be young professionals, could be families who are growing and need more space.
Yeah.
It could even be, individuals who are making a big life change and deciding to put down roots.
So it's less about a specific demographic and more about that shared experience of being new to the whole home buying process.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that shared mindset of, I'm entering this new world. I'm not really sure what to expect.
Right.
I'm probably working with a budget and feeling a little bit anxious about the whole thing.
Well, that makes sense when you think about all the things that are involved.
Oh, yeah.
You got the financial side of it, which is huge.
Absolutely.
Can I even afford this? How much house can I actually qualify for?
Right. All those big questions about mortgages and down payments.
Right. And then there's all the like hidden costs that you don't even think about until you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, closing costs, property taxes, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely understandable why people would feel anxious.
For sure.
But it's interesting because our sources also highlight some of the less obvious anxieties
Yeah.
that first-time home buyers might have.
Yeah, the emotional side of it.
Yeah, like what are some of those?
Well, things like the fear of making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
It's a huge commitment,
Yeah.
right?
It's not like buying a car. You can't just trade it in next year if you don't like it.
Exactly. And there's so many options out there, so many different neighborhoods, types of houses. It can be really overwhelming to try and figure out what's the right fit for you.
And then there's just all the jargon and the paperwork.
Oh, yeah.
It could feel like you're learning a whole new language.
It really can't. And I think that's where the role of the real estate agent becomes so crucial.
Okay.
They need to be more than just a salesperson. They need to be a guide, a translator, someone who can help the buyer navigate all of that complexity and make sense of it all.
So it's about building trust and making the client feel comfortable and supported throughout the process.
Exactly.
Because if you already feel overwhelmed and confused, the last thing you need is someone pushing you into a decision you're not ready for.
Right. You want to feel like you're in good hands, like you're working with someone who has your best interests at heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does an agent actually build that trust, especially with a first-time buyer who might be a little bit wary?
Well, our source had some really great tips on that.
Okay, I'm all ears.
One thing they emphasized was the power of sharing relatable success stories,
Oh, interesting.
particularly stories involving other first-time buyers.
So it's not just about showcasing your experience or credentials. It's
Yeah.
about making that human connection, showing that you understand where the buyer's coming from.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about saying, "Hey, I've helped people just like you navigate this process successfully,
Okay.
and here's what we did, and here's how it worked out."
Mm-hmm.
So it gives the buyer that sense of, I'm not alone in this.
Right.
Other people have been here before, and they've come out the other side happy and in a new home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And another technique that the source highlighted was what they called reflective listening.
Reflective listening.
Uh-uh.
What is that?
Basically, it's about acknowledging and validating the client's concerns.
Okay.
So instead of just dismissing their fears with a simple "don't worry,"
Uh,
you dig a little deeper. You might say something like, "It sounds like you're really concerned about the closing costs. Tell me more about what's worrying you."
okay, so you're not just brushing them off. You're actually taking the time to listen and understand their perspective.
Exactly, and that can make a huge difference in terms of building trust.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really reassuring, especially for someone who's feeling a little bit lost in the whole process.
Absolutely.
And it kind of shows that you're not just in it for the sale. You're actually invested in helping them find the right home.
Exactly. And that leads us to another really important point that our source brought up,
Okay.
which is simplifying the complex.
Oh, yeah.
Because let's face it, the real estate world is full of jargon and processes that can be really confusing for someone who's never done this before.
Oh, yeah. I remember feeling like I was back in high school algebra class, like trying to decipher all these weird terms and formulas.
Exactly. And our source really emphasizes that agents need to do a better job of explaining things in plain English,
Yeah.
using analogies and real-world examples that people can relate to.
So, like, instead of throwing around terms like escrow or amortization,
Right.
you actually take the time to break it down and explain what it means in a way that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. For example, you could explain escrow as basically a neutral third party who holds the money and the paperwork until the deal is closed.
Okay.
Kind of like a referee in a game.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense than
Right.
just saying escrow.
Exactly. And the source also had some great advice about using analogies to explain mortgage points.
Mortgage points. And that was something I never really understood.
Yeah, it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But basically, you can think of points as kind of buying a discount on your interest rate.
Okay.
So you're paying a fee up front
Mm-hmm.
in exchange for a lower interest rate over the life of the loan.
So it's like paying a little extra now to save money in the long run.
Exactly.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Right. And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
To make it clear and understandable for the buyer
Yeah.
so they can make informed decisions.
I wish someone had explained it to me like that when I was buying my first place.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way.
It would have saved me a lot of stress and confusion.
Absolutely. And this whole idea of simplification, it shouldn't just apply to explaining terms.
Okay.
It should extend to the entire home buying process.
So like providing a roadmap for the buyer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laying out the steps involved from pre-approval to closing
Yeah.
so they know what to expect at each stage.
And maybe even giving them a checklist or a timeline.
Yeah, that can be really helpful, especially for first-time buyers.
Right, so they can stay organized and
Right.
and feel like they're in control of the process.
Exactly. And that can go a long way in reducing their stress levels.
Yeah, because even with the best explanations and the clearest roadmap, buying a house can still be a pretty emotional experience.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot at stake, both financially and emotionally.
Right.
And even when things are going smoothly, there's bound to be some ups and downs.
Oh, yeah. I remember lying awake at night wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life.
That's so common.
Yeah.
And it's something that agents need to be sensitive to.
So it's not just about getting the deal done. It's about helping the buyer manage their expectations and their emotions throughout the process.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit more because I think that's a really important aspect that often gets overlooked.
Absolutely.
So what are some ways that agents can help their clients navigate the emotional roller coaster of home buying?
Well, one thing that our source emphasizes is the importance of addressing the stress head on.
Oh.
Acknowledging that it's a normal part of the process
Uh-huh.
and providing strategies for coping with it.
Like what kind of strategy?
Well, encouraging the buyer to take breaks when they need them, to lean on their support network, friends, family, um, and even to celebrate those small victories along the way.
Celebrate the small victories. I like that.
Yeah, because it's easy to get so caught up in the stress and the details
Yeah.
that you forget to enjoy the process
Right.
and to appreciate those milestones.
So like getting pre-approved for a mortgage
Exactly.
or finding a house that checks most of your boxes.
Exactly. Or even just surviving a particularly stressful open house.
Yeah.
Those are all things worth celebrating.
Because those small wins can really help keep momentum going.
Exactly. And they can help maintain a positive outlook,
Right.
which is so crucial when you're making such a significant life decision.
So it's not just about the end goal of getting the keys to your new home.
Right.
It's about creating a positive experience from start to finish.
Exactly. And I think that speaks to the power of communication that we keep coming back to
Yeah.
when it's done right. It can transform the entire home buying experience from something that's stressful and overwhelming to
Right.
something that's exciting and even enjoyable.
And it's not just about the transaction itself. It's about building a relationship that lasts beyond the closing date,
That's a great point.
right? Like you want an agent who's going to be there for you even after you've moved in.
Absolutely.
Someone you can call with questions about home maintenance or local resources.
Right.
Someone who becomes a part of your community.
Exactly. And that made me think of a line from our source material that really resonated with me.
Okay.
They said, helping a first-time buyer isn't just about closing a deal, it's about opening the door to their future.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah, it really captures the long-term impact of a positive home buying experience.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder about the ripple effect that kind of experience can have.
What do you mean?
Well, if your first experience buying a home is positive,
Mm-hmm.
if you feel empowered and supported throughout the process,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't that shape how you approach future home-related decisions?
I think you're onto something.
Like maybe you're more likely to tackle renovations with confidence
Yeah,
or feel more comfortable negotiating for what you want
absolutely.
because you know you've been through it before and you know that it can be a positive experience.
Right.
And it could even shape their perceptions of the real estate industry as a whole.
Yeah, instead
Yeah.
of viewing it as this intimidating and transactional experience,
Right.
maybe they see it as a collaborative partnership,
Yeah.
one where their needs are valued.
And that could have huge implications not just for individual buyers,
Mhm.
but for the industry as a whole.
Absolutely.
Wow, you've given me a lot to think about.
Well, that's what we're here for.
It really reframes the whole home buying experience, seeing it as the beginning of a much larger journey,
Exactly.
and a journey that can be filled with so much more than just stress and paperwork.
Absolutely. It can be exciting and rewarding
Yeah,
and ultimately life-changing.
well said. I think that's a great place to take a break.
Sounds good to me.
We'll be back in a few minutes to continue our deep dive into the world of first-time home buyers.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back, and we've been talking about, all the complexities of buying a home for the first time.
Yeah, all the things to consider, all the moving parts.
Right, and how important communication is
Absolutely.
between the agent and the buyer.
Yeah, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Right. But even with the best communication and the most experienced agent, it can still be a pretty emotional process.
Oh, for sure. I mean, buying a home is a huge decision.
Huge.
One of the biggest most people will ever make.
Right, and it's not just about the money.
No, there's a lot of emotional weight attached to it, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about finding a place where you're going to build a life.
Right. Putting down roots.
Yeah. And that could bring up all sorts of feelings.
For sure, excitement, anticipation, but also maybe some anxiety and fear.
Yeah. Definitely fear of making the wrong decision.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
What if I choose the wrong house or the wrong neighborhood?
Right, right. Or what if I overpay?
Exactly. And then there's the stress of the whole process itself.
Oh, yeah. The paperwork, the negotiations, the deadlines.
Right. It can be a lot to handle.
It really can. And that's why our sources really emphasize the importance of managing expectations.
Okay. How so?
Well, for one thing, being upfront about potential challenges.
So like not sugarcoating things.
Exactly. If it's a competitive market, you need to let the buyer know that they might face some bidding wars.
Uh-huh.
Or if their budget is tight, you might need to have a conversation about compromises.
Right, because sometimes that dream home they have in mind
Yeah,
might not be realistic.
exactly. And it's better to have that conversation up front
Right.
than to let them get their hopes up only to be disappointed later.
Absolutely.
No.
So it's about setting them up for success, not just in finding a home,
Right.
but in feeling good about the choices they make along the way.
Exactly.
And our source also talked about the importance of addressing the stress directly.
Yeah, you can't just ignore it.
Right, because it's going to be there whether you acknowledge it or not.
Exactly. And a good agent will proactively offer strategies for coping.
So like what kind of strategies?
Well, encouraging the buyer to take breaks when they need them,
Okay.
to step away from the process for a bit,
Uh-huh.
to lean on their support network, talk to friends and family,
Yeah.
and also to practice some self-care.
Self-care. That's important.
Absolutely.
Right.
Whatever helps them relax and de-stress.
Right, because if you're not taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
the whole process is just going to feel that much harder.
Exactly. And our source also mentioned something that I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
They talked about the importance of celebrating the small victories.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's easy to get so focused on the end goal.
Right, getting the keys.
Exactly, that we forget to appreciate all the little wins along the way.
Yeah, like what kind of small victories are we talking about?
Well, getting pre-approved for a mortgage, that's a big one.
Uh-huh.
Finding a house that checks most of your boxes, even just surviving a particularly stressful open house,
Okay,
those are all things worth celebrating.
because they're all steps in the right direction.
Exactly, and they help build momentum and maintain a positive outlook.
Right, so it's not just about the destination.
No,
It's about enjoying the journey.
exactly. And that brings us back to the importance of communication.
Probably.
Because when you have that open and honest dialogue with your agent,
Uh-huh.
you feel more supported, more confident, and more able to handle the ups and downs.
Right, and it's not just about getting the deal closed.
No, it's about building a relationship.
Right, like you want an agent who's going to be there for you even after you've moved in.
Absolutely. Someone you can call with questions, someone who can recommend local services.
Yeah, like a trusted advisor.
Exactly. And there was a line from our source material that really stuck with me.
Okay, what was it?
They said helping a first-time buyer isn't just about closing a deal. It's about opening the door to their future.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, it really captures the essence of what we've been talking about.
It's not just a transaction, it's a life-changing event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when it's done right, it can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond the closing date.
So how do you think that ripple effect plays out?
Well, for one thing, I think it can shape the buyer's perception of the real estate industry as a whole.
Okay.
Instead of viewing it as this intimidating and adversarial process,
Right.
they might see it as a more collaborative and supportive experience.
And that could lead to more positive interactions down the line.
Exactly. Maybe they're more likely to recommend their agent to friends and family,
Uh-huh.
or to feel more comfortable working with real estate professionals in the future.
Right, because they've had that positive experience.
Exactly. And that can really help build trust and confidence in the industry as a whole.
So it's not just about the individual buyer.
Yeah.
It's about the bigger picture. Wow, that's a really powerful thought.
It is.
And it really highlights the importance of communication and building strong relationships.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation.
I've enjoyed it.
Me too. And I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I know we're not done yet.
We've got more to dive into.
We do. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap things up.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dives into the world of first-time home buyers. And, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of the process.
Yeah, we've really tried to cover all the bases.
But if you had to choose just one key takeaway, what would it be?
That's a tough one, but I think I'd have to say it's the importance of communication.
Communication.
Yeah, clear, empathetic communication between the agent and the buyer.
And why is that so important?
Well, because it really is the foundation of a successful home buying experience,
Okay.
especially for first-timers who are new to the whole process.
Right, because they're probably feeling a lot of uncertainty and maybe even a little bit of fear.
Exactly. And that's where a good agent can really make a difference.
By being a good communicator.
Exactly. By listening to their concerns, by explaining things in a way that they understand.
So it's about more than just finding them a house.
Oh, absolutely. It's about guiding them through the process, providing support and advice, and making sure they feel empowered to make informed decisions.
So it's about building a relationship.
Exactly.
And that relationship, it starts with that very first interaction.
Right, from the moment they meet.
Yeah, and it continues all the way through to closing and even beyond.
Absolutely.
Because ideally, you want an agent who's going to be there for you even after you've moved in.
Right. Someone you can call with questions or concerns.
Yeah, like a trusted advisor.
Exactly.
And speaking of advice, what would you say to someone who's just starting their home buying journey?
Well, first of all, I'd say congratulations.
Yeah, it's an exciting time.
It is. And it's also a time to be patient and do your research.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Find an agent who you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, someone who you trust.
Exactly. And remember, you're in control.
That's important.
You're the one making the decisions.
Right, so don't let anyone pressure you into something you're not ready for.
Exactly. Take your time and enjoy the process.
And if you start to feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out for help.
Absolutely. There are so many resources available.
right? From online guides to friends and family who've been through it before.
And of course, your agent should be your go-to resource.
Absolutely.
They should be there to answer your questions and provide support every step of the way.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I hope our listeners have come away with a better understanding of what it takes to be a successful first-time home buyer.
I hope so too.
And remember, it's a journey,
It is.
but it's a journey that can be incredibly rewarding. So
Absolutely.
to all our listeners out there who are embarking on their own home buying adventures,
Yeah.
we wish you the best of luck.
Happy house hunting.
And remember, don't be afraid to dive in.
That's right. The water's fine.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. But we'll be back next week with another deep dive into a fascinating topic.
Until then, thanks for listening.